All right. Hey, welcome. Really excited to have you here and join me in this conversation that I'm introducing really quick with this interview I had with a good friend of mine, Erin Leck. And Erin is the vice president and sales leader for Mason McDuffie Mortgage in the Midwest region. I've known Erin now for 4 or 5 years and love this guy. Tremendous family man, married with 4 kids, and yet he balances that really well because he gets after it at work. He invests in his people, and I just love his energy and his spirit. And I think you're going to pick up on that in our discussion time as well. Erin and I are talking about call reluctance today, which is that feeling of uncertainty, maybe a little bit of fear when it's time to pick up the phone and do something hard, right? Making a phone call or going out in the field to prospect and to reach out maybe to a real estate agent or a group of agents. And I know that I want to meet with them because I know there's opportunity there, but it's like, what am I going to say? How am I going to feel if they don't, if I don't feel accepted, if I feel rejected? And sometimes we allow that fear to build up, and then we push the activity out, and we never go see those agents, or we never pick up the phone and make that call. And in this discussion with Erin today, he just does a great job of sharing how he's had call reluctance in his own life, his own career, and then some thoughts on overcoming that and pushing through that fear and even leveraging that into action and moving forward. So again, it's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. This is my good friend, Erin Leck. All right, well, welcome, guys. I'm very excited today to get to spend some time, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes with my good friend, Erin Leck. And Erin's with MasonMac. And so, Erin, welcome, man. Good to see you and good to
For
catch up with you
sure.
today.
Yeah, we've been trying to wrestle this bear for a while, so it's fun to finally get on camera and hang out with
We,
you for a while. You're a good
we
friend, and this will be a blast.
yeah, we finally got it done. Erin and I have we had an initial conversation about doing this maybe 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, and then we had
Yeah,
it booked like 3 or 4 different times, and different conflicts kind of cropped up. So we're excited we got to do this today and get to share this conversation with you guys. So welcome in. We're gonna talk about this a topic that Erin, you and I have talked about lots of different times over the years of call reluctance, right? Like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's it. I kind of sometimes it's that you could not define it, but like that sense of foreboding,
yeah,
an emotional sense of foreboding of I just don't want to go. Well, it's a combination of like I don't want to do something hard, and then combined with like usually the hard thing is go see somebody, right? Like
yeah,
call somebody on the phone or go meet with an agent or whatever it is, and like it
yeah,
feels hard. And so we just kind of wanted to bat that topic around a little bit today and pull at it, come at it from some different perspectives, and talk a little bit about our experience with it, maybe some of the people we've led and coached and mentored over the years, how they maybe have overcome it, and just kind of attack it that way today. So anyway, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. What are just some initial thoughts? Like when you hear call reluctance, how does that strike you? How do you define it? Yeah,
yeah.
what are just some initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, the overarching theme of it is just fear. It's fear of unknown, fear of rejection, but it's
Hmm.
all, it's all fear-based. And we've laughed about this before, but I can just think of, nights where I literally knew the next day I was going to have to go see somebody that I didn't know, walk in their door and say hello. And you think of all the worst things, and it can be paralyzing. And I talked about this too. It's not just maybe a one-time thing. It's just it kind of manifests and rolls up on itself sometimes. But at the end of the day, I think that it's really just this fear-based, what's the worst thing that could happen? And this is the worst thing that
Mm.
could happen, and it's hard. It really is. It's a hard thing to get over. I can remember when I first got to be a sales rep, like in the middle 90s. I mean,
Hmm.
I literally would work myself up so bad where I wouldn't sleep all night. That I can remember the first day where I was really like let loose, And I sat in a parking lot in Dallas, Texas, in 110-degree temperature in a suit. We wore suits back then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm not kidding. I sat in the car and I was sweating, and I was 23 years old, and I'm looking at this office and I'm like, oh man, no. Why do I have to do this? I want to go back to, to the office job. But it's just one of those things where the more you do it, the easier it gets, and your perspective changes. And hopefully we'll get a chance to kind of talk about that broad spectrum of, how do we overcome it? And I don't know that you ever necessarily overcome it, but you certainly get used to it. You can
Yeah.
certainly numb yourself to it. And there are times when you get excited about it, and we can certainly delve into how that happens too.
Well, and even like, I think like I'm happy to share. This may not be your experience for today, but anytime I am doing something like this that we're doing right here, right? Like a live Zoom that we're recording, and it's just you and me right now, but it's like it is going to be viewed by other people, you know? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anytime I've done something like that, or anytime I'm speaking to a group, maybe it's 5 people, maybe it's several hundred people, it is, man, like the heartbeat goes up a little bit.
For
And
sure.
maybe it's the night before or even the week before, you're starting to think about, well, I think what call reluctance is, one way to look at it is it's our imagination at work in a
Yeah.
negative way, right? We're framing up a potential or maybe multiple potential negative outcomes. And
Right.
our imagination, if we're not in control of that, like actively, proactively thinking about the narrative of what the outcome is that I want, then man, my imagination can go right into a loop of something negative, and then
For
I'm
sure.
feeling the emotions of that, right? Like I feel
Yes.
the
Yep.
emotional weight of that potential negative outcome. Does that
Yeah. Yeah.
strike
And
you? Like,
there's nothing that's good about it too. Your muscles get tense, and your mouth starts to water a little bit. And I just read last week that it was a really cool perspective. And I can't remember who it was. I wish I could remember who to credit this to, but what he said is that if you don't get nervous at times like that, that's your body preparing you. Like, your body is telling you,
100%.
like, I am ready for this. I am ready to do this. We got this. Let's get the mind right. Let's go do this. Because without the adrenaline and some of the other chemicals, and maybe your background might be able to speak to that. Without that, you're going to be foggy. You're going to be lost. Your body is saying, hey, let's do this. I am ready to do this. That was a really, really cool perspective for me to read that article. It was, I hadn't really ever thought about it that way, for sure.
Yeah, you bet. I remember reading something similar about that, and they just flat out named it, calling it anxiety. That it's an anxiety response. It's that fight or flight response.
Yep.
That is your body's way of preparing you, and that's where that strikes home at where someone is thinking about, like, okay, I don't have on my calendar today anything that I have to do, right? I don't have scheduled calls, or I don't have applications to take, or whatever. So, but what I do have is I have 2 hours blocked out on my calendar where I'm supposed to be either cold calling real estate agents,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna follow up with them, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden the heart rate goes up a little bit, right?
Yep.
And
For
that's
sure.
the
Yeah.
rubber meeting the road. And I love your point on that, because it's like, I think it does help. That's one potential help, is like recognizing that and going, okay, like I can leverage some of these feelings of anxiety in
Yeah.
that my body's demonstrating, like it's prepared to fight a little bit, to move
Yep.
forward towards this challenge, or I can run away. That's the flight response. Like I'm just going to
Right.
step away from it. And I
Yeah.
think so. Anyway, I think that's a great insight there.
It's like that. So there's a movie that I love that we bought a zoo. Have you seen that with Matt Damon? Or anyway, there's a
No.
part where he's explaining to his kids how he met his wife, and he's walking, on the street by this cafe, and he looks in the window and sees this beautiful woman sitting in there, and he's like, oh man, what am I going to do? I need to go talk to her. And so as he's telling his kids, he walks up and says, all it takes is 20 seconds of courage, 20
Mm,
seconds of courage. And he walks up to her and he says, why would a girl like you talk to a guy like me, you know? And she said her comeback was, well, why not? But it's just that 20 seconds of courage, because the other side is like when you do it and you're done, whether you connect with somebody or you don't connect with somebody, that release that you get for having done it is amazing. And it's the weirdest thing. Like, even if the call doesn't go well, there's still a positive, your body
Yes.
reacts positively to completing that task because it's a big one, right? It can feel monumental, versus, in the scenario you described, when you walk away, then you've got a whole other set of things to deal with. You're a little bit depressed, you're, mad at yourself,
I
the
should have. I
walking.
could have.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And you can always convince yourself, you can always say, oh, well, I'm just going to do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. But it just hangs there, your body doesn't really let you get over it. It's almost like your body's like, hey, let's, we got a dog in this fight. Let's go back and give this a shot.
Yeah.
But if you can I wish you could bottle it. Like, I wish you could bottle that feeling of a successful cold call. If you could, you'd be, Elon Musk at this point, but if you
Yep.
could just bottle it, but if you can remember that, like if you could just take a second and think about when you're done, that one successful call and how good that feels, and remind yourself of that, hey, I'm getting ready to do this, but this is, I might feel like that. It's the same release that you get for, winning a championship. I mean, the highest of the highs, the same chemicals are released when you complete a little cold call.
Yeah.
It's
No, I,
amazing how your body is there to fight for you and support you. It's crazy. It really
yeah,
is.
no, I really think you're nailing this, a really important concept. And I can't remember if we talked about this or not when we were setting this call up a month ago, but um, this comes out of a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and there's a phrase in that book that has stuck with me, at least the essence of it, and you're describing it, and that is that our minds, our brains, our nervous system cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real
Okay.
event. Cannot tell the difference.
Really? That's interesting.
And so that's actually what, to me anyway, like that's what you're describing is like when you said, if we could, you said bottle it, and then you said like take that successful experience, that successful cult, and replay it, right? And that is the proactive use of our imagination, the proactive use.
That's
So
interesting.
if I am if I let my imagination run wild when it's time to I've got 2 hours blocked out on my calendar and I'm going to make these proactive calls. Well, that's hard. I'm worried about rejection. I'm worried about what are people going to think? How am I going to feel? How bad am I going to beat myself up if I feel like I don't do a good job? And so our body's response to that is, well, we're dealing with fear and uncertainty. It's our body releases chemicals. Our brain, our nervous system responds to our imagination in a negative way. In the same way as if I go out and I do a terrible job, or I'm in sports and I blow a play or whatever, like we experience emotions. We're human. But
Right.
but the flip side of that is that we can leverage that aspect of this principle that our brains, our minds, our bodies cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one by replaying successful events in the past. Something that
Interesting.
I've done well, and that elicits a positive emotion in my mind, in my body. We feel that bodily. And so real quick, I'll share this with you because I've always, this made it click for me when I read this. I don't even know, probably the first time I read that was 15, 20 years ago. The book is really old, but he's like, imagine you're walking along in a forest and you see a bear, right? Like 50 yards away, and you see this black bear. It's a mama bear with cubs. And you're like, well, what's going to happen? Well, your body's going to respond. There's going to be a fear response, and you're going to
Right.
have, all these things in your brain. firing, and you're going to experience emotions of fear and uncertainty and panic and maybe even a little bit of terror because your body's amping up, like it may need to run or is it going to charge or
Right.
whatever, right? But then he's
Yeah.
like, okay, now let's think for a second. You're walking through the same forest and you look out there and you think you see a bear, but it's really just an actor in a bear suit, or it's a dog that you just mistook for a bear. Doesn't matter. You're you think you see a bear, so you're going to experience those emotions. Reality
Interesting.
has nothing to do with it. What's
Huh.
actually real out there doesn't matter. It's our perception of it. And like,
Interesting.
so I'm
Wow.
no, it's like, this is so good for me to talk through again. I love talking through this topic because I'm not great. I'm not a great practitioner of it, but I
Uh-huh.
but I do know it's like all of this is what undergirded um, the like sports psychology today.
Okay. I was just going to ask about that. Okay.
The fact that every golfer has a sports psychologist, not
Yeah.
but like most of them, and it's
Yep.
they're one of the main cores of that is using imagination to replay past amazing shots to give me that, they call it the winning feeling. So I'm ready to go for this shot. So anyway,
Interesting.
yeah,
That's wild. That's crazy. I've never made like that connection because I've, grown up playing baseball. You always have people saying, "Hey, visualize yourself hitting that, that line drive to center field and visualize over and over and over." And I mean, I think even one of the first it was a VHS tape, but it was Rod Carew and it was this hitting thing, but part of it was just closing your eyes and you could hear this, there's this certain melody that played along with it, but it was just visualizing yourself, swinging and swinging and swinging. And that now that brings a 35-year-old thing back into play for me. That's
yeah,
crazy. That's
yeah.
wild. Huh. Interesting.
So
Interesting.
back to your original point on that, I think that's a practical thing for those listening today. And I mean, that's something again, I do
Great
try. I'm
idea.
not great at it, but I will tell you that that is what I was doing for the 30 minutes leading up to this discussion with you.
Interesting.
I was thinking about previous interviews that I felt like went well,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about our discussion from, a month ago that went well. And we said, like, if we could capture that tone on
Right.
that call,
Yeah.
like that'd be really good. It was
Yeah.
casual, it was conversational.
Yep.
And then thinking about like our relationship, and we've had lots of conversations that have been fun and engaging and amazing,
Yep.
right? And so that helped me mentally, emotionally prepare for like this discussion,
Yep.
and just utilizing our imagination that way. So um, I think that's what you were kind of describing in
Wow. That's
with
highlight
call
number one. Yeah.
reluctance, and
Yeah.
seeing agents. Like if you can replay that, I think that practically helps.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And I think that, to go on to other things that have worked, I think the
Yeah,
one thing is that there's so many unknowns when when you pick up that phone or you knock on that door or wherever it is. And, if you can eliminate as many unknowns as possible,
that's
you
good.
get yourself that much further ahead, and I think that one of the keys that I found to work and we talk about a lot at MasonMac is, doing that research. There's so much information available out there online now. You can, between social media or reviews, you can almost create a whole script, or a design conversation before you even call somebody. You're going to know what they like, you're going to know about their family, you're going to know about their business. You've got all these avenues to take a conversation when they pick up the phone, and you affirm them up front and compliment them or
Yeah,
congratulate them on something and lead them into a conversation around something that you already know. You're not, at that point in time, you're creating kind of this warm, friendly feel. It's a cold call, but it's not really a cold call, and
yeah,
even to take it a step further, if you're a planner, we work on the strategy all the time too, is you can warm up all of this on social media by connecting with these people and liking and commenting on their stuff. Let them see you out there. You
yes,
don't have to give yourself a list of names. at 8 in the morning, at 9 in the morning, you got to call these 50 people. You don't have to do that. If you strategically invest time in, here's the 20 people I would really like to get to know, and I want to get to know them, or at least have a conversation with them 6 months from now.
Yes, I was
And
going to
you've
say the
got
same
this
thing. Six
evolving list
months.
of people, right? Then you're liking, you're commenting, you're connecting. You maybe come across a book that's really cool, and you shoot them a direct message. Hey, this book was awesome. I'd love to send you a copy of it. You can share it with your teams or use it to develop your business or whatever. There are so many ways that to get to the point where a cold call almost doesn't, it's not that it doesn't exist anymore, but it doesn't have to
Yeah,
exist in this
man.
big, scary, hairy monster that's, standing in the dark in your backyard. These people know my name. They've seen me. I've seen them, follow me here and there. Pick up the phone when there's something to say, hey, we've been going back and forth, and we've connected on a bunch of things. It's crazy that we haven't had a cup of coffee. I'd love to learn more about your business, or I'm working on this stuff. I'd love to get your feedback on,
Yep.
do you think this might work? Would you like to be a part of this? And then again, you take a part of your business strategies and bring it to them and show value there. But I don't think that we can take so much of that unknown fear out of the equation these days. It's amazing. It really is. And it's something that I 1,000,000% believe in, that people on the other side of it, you don't like to be cold called, just like I don't like to be cold called. And there's people that, that certainly get your attention. But I'm way more apt to connect with somebody online and then have a conversation with them. That happens, almost daily at this point. So
Yeah,
I know
I
that
couldn't.
it's successful.
You hit so many things there. One of them, though, I would say, like, just even what you mentioned at the end there, like when I'm being cold called. I mean, I basically won't answer my phone if the person's not
Right?
in my phone, and I'm pretty deliberate about, like, if I meet somebody, I try to get them in my phone. So just in case, the off
Yep,
chance that we
for
cross
sure.
paths, like I want to pick up.
Yeah,
But like other than that, I'm not answering. We're just in
yeah,
this, and you and I've talked about that a lot in recruiting. I mean, the way things operate in our business, it's not everyone for sure, but like the percentages continue to go down every year of
yep.
the answer, like calls being answered percentage.
Yeah, I wonder what that percentage is now. God.
It's really low.
Yeah,
And like, well, it's under 10%, and then there's some other variables, but the so like I love that aspect of it, and bringing the research piece to it. Like it again, like I think you kind of open by saying it removes uncertainty. I'm learning a little bit about this person,
right. Yeah,
and that helps just emotionally. Like I'm not going into this blind. Like I have some idea, a little bit of an idea,
yeah,
who this
yeah,
person is. The other thing that I really liked, and I'm maybe you could speak a little more to it, but like you mentioned, because there's a couple schools of thought on this. Let's say we'll call it cold calling for lack of a better word. But
yeah,
what you and I are kind of describing is more like, how could we turn cold calls into something even a little bit lukewarm, right?
yeah, yeah.
But let's just say that we're calling the exercise cold calling. One school of thought tends to move or tends to frame this up as make a hunt. We'll just call it. We'll pick a number because it sounds outrageous to me, but it's definitely taught. You're going to make 100 proactive cold calls a day. 4 days
Right.
a week, let's say.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's one school of thought, and I'm not even saying that's wrong. I'm not.
Sure.
It's not a judgment thing. It's just that's not what we're really talking about. The other side, I'd say, is more like what how we've operated, which is fewer fewer calls, but a focus is on more the quality of the call as opposed to just
Right.
checking a box that I talked to someone or that I
Yeah.
attempted to talk to someone. So I'm just
Right.
curious, like for me, I know I definitely found way more success in aiming at trying to have, it's definitely going to be fewer interactions, perhaps, maybe not, but like fewer dial outs to have more quality conversations than just dialing for the sake of dialing. So I can say at
Right.
the end of the day, I've made these calls. Agree with that? Thoughts on that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if there's any way that you can improve your ratio of connecting, if you make, the old traditional cold calling way, if you make, 100 calls, you literally are probably only going to connect with, a handful of people. But if you can take those same 100 calls, that same amount of time, that same amount of effort, put a little research into it, and instead of 5 out of 100, you're going to have 12 out of 100 or 15 out of 100 connect exponentially. You multiply that times 10, you're going to have 120 new connections instead of maybe 40 or 50. I think that just from a time perspective, spending that little extra time researching it is going to make you more efficient at the bottom line, taking all the emotion and everything out of it. It's just a good way to manage your time, because you are going to connect with more people if you come at it with kind of that philosophy of, hey, I took the time to get to know you a little bit. I want to show you that I know you a little bit. I'm not just calling somebody because I saw that you did $30 million last year. I'm actually calling because I saw that you and your team did this charity, and I thought that was really cool, and I want to hear more about it because I feel like we're aligned culturally in doing the philanthropic type stuff or charitable events. Let's connect that way. It's almost foolish to think that you wouldn't have more success by doing things like that. It's weird that I don't even know if you can really call it like a new axiom of sales, but I know that 20 years ago, obviously the internet didn't exist, but you still had ways that you could find things out about people, but you never did, right?
Yeah, no,
I
we have
think
an
that,
advantage.
yeah, I think we wholeheartedly we do. And I think that, if we're not doing that things, I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because there's more and more people that are doing it, and you're just going to slide further and further behind,
Yeah.
I think that's how it's gonna go for you if you're not taking that time to do the research. So, and it's good for you because the second and third steps, it takes 8 calls sometimes to connect with one person. But if you know more about them, that second call and that third call, you've got different things. Maybe you're sending them something that that they like, or something related, a joke gift or something like that. There's so many tentacles that come from just doing that 10 minutes of research. You don't even have to be scared to make that second call. It's they hang up on you or they don't answer. That second call is almost worse than the first call if you don't know these people, because then you get to the fifth call and you're like, oh crap, they know my number, they're not going to answer. But if you've been sending them stuff and leaving them valuable voicemails or texts or whatever you've done, send them books, gifts, ideas, at some point in time they're either going to have to say thank you to you, or they're going to at least say, hey, this person's putting in some effort. I would be anyway. If there's somebody that calls me 5 times and every single time they bring me something that I can use, there's a point in time I'm going to answer that phone and I'm going to say,
Yep.
man, thank you. I
Nothing
used
else, right?
yeah, a couple of months ago you sent me that book, and man, that was fantastic, and I shared it with my team. I'd love to go grab a cup of coffee. What else you got going on? I do that, all the time. That happens to me, I say all the time, but it happens quite a bit when people are persistent over time.
Yeah. So you're hitting something I think is so critical. This distinction, I think, of when you are what the process you are describing, both that when you've had success in cold calling, and then you just described like when someone's cold calling you and it
Yeah.
works, right?
Right.
The way I would define that, it's like first of all, it's a process. It's not a phone call. It's not a singular event that took place, right? Like you're describing there's there's lots of different ways to do this, but you talked about like maybe it's send a book, or maybe you send an email, or maybe it's a
Mhm.
text, or maybe it's a funny text, or you do some research, and maybe it's somebody that that knows this person. I use that as a
Sure.
relational bridge, but it's a process as opposed to just like I'm picking this name out of a list of real estate agent names, and I'm just
Right.
going to call them. Like
Right.
my anxiety would be through the roof
Oh God.
with
Yeah.
the latter compared to the former, right?
Yep.
Or
For
reverse. But
sure.
like
Yeah.
if I know a little bit about the person, if I feel like they might know a little bit about me,
Yeah.
and I've done some homework, and maybe I've connected with them on LinkedIn, or I've
Yeah.
sent them right. Like it just makes that phone call so much easier.
Yeah.
it's a process though. It's this process of moving towards a relationship as opposed to like, I need to make a phone call because I'm focused on, I want to get a transaction closed and I don't care who it's with. And so I'm just going to call this name. And so, yeah, anyway, thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, no, and I think you touched on something like psychologically, even if you're putting yourself out there online with the likes and the comments and sending, direct message, whatever, in your mind, you feel like they know who you are. They may not know you from Adam. They
Right.
still may not know who you are, but you've got that psychological advantage of, hey, this person knows who I am. I know they've seen my name. I know that I've been in their sphere a little bit. They know who I am. I'm bolder. I'm braver. I can do this. They're going to recognize my name, and that call is so much easier to make when, think about it. You've got warm handoffs, happen occasionally in the business, and somebody calls you and said, hey, you got to call Joe Smith and over at XYZ Mortgage. I was just talking about you, and man, he would love to hear. I
Yep.
mean, you can't find your phone fast enough to call that guy, right? You're calling Joe and you're having lunch in 2 days. It's not, you're only 1 degree of separation probably from that when you're doing the warm stuff, when you're doing the
Yes.
messaging, when you connect, however you do it. Again, I think that psychological edge is so important to making these types of calls, especially when you're going to call a big producer. So
Yeah.
hear my dogs bark in the background. Can you hear that?
No, I didn't, but
Yeah,
no, that's,
yeah,
yeah, that's all right.
yeah,
And maybe just continuation of thought on that, like, we'll just call it follow up, like,
yeah,
again, this is, if we're talking about a process, we're not, and I think removing this unnecessary weight that we can sometimes put on an initial contact, right? Like it's got
right,
to go well. And if it doesn't go well, then life is over or
right,
whatever, or I'm going to
yeah,
feel just so discouraged if I don't, right?
right,
Like sometimes people will go to a coffee appointment. I see this all the time. And they'll take an agent to coffee and they muster up the courage to do it. But then
yeah,
it's just like there's so much emphasis that the loan officer themselves is putting on this coffee needs to go well. And what I mean
right.
by well is, and it's illogical, but it's like they should be sending me a deal by the time we're walking out
Yes,
of here, or I should have a
right,
referral by tomorrow, which
yeah,
is just
right,
so, as opposed to like incorporating. I just think about it in terms of follow up. Like what would success look like if in a 30-minute coffee? And then how
sure,
can I leverage that really well with my follow up? And I'm gonna follow up with this person 5 different times in the next 30 days. So
right,
anyway, I want to
yeah,
hear your thoughts on that, like how you incorporate follow up, and if you could also maybe see if psychologically if that helps with this initial obstacle of call reluctance. Like I don't want to
yeah.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure it does, because there's a whole nother kind of subsection of this, and it's coming to it with the thought of, hey, I know I'm really good at what I do. I've done a lot of these things. I work with a lot of people. I think I can genuinely help this person. I think that when
Yes.
I sit down, I'm not here to try to sell you something. I'm here because I know that that you may be having issues here, or that I can fix this here, but I may not be able to fix anything. We may sit here for 30 minutes and we may stand up and hug or shake hands and say, man, let's, have a cup of coffee. I don't know if I'm ready to work with you, but even that end is still great because there is a next step. But I think if you come at it,
Yes.
and I'll get to your follow-up point in a second, but if you come at it with, the research piece and that I'm here to help. I genuinely want to learn about this
Yes.
person. I'm not selling them anything at all. And if I help them to make a decision to leave the lender that they're at and go somewhere else, I've still helped them. What's wrong with
Yep.
that? I can feel good about that. They're going to respect me. I'm going to develop a relationship with them. I've got a friend for life, maybe, and at some point, maybe we'll work together down the road, and I think from a follow-up standpoint, that makes it easier, because when you sit down and you're talking to them, and you want to help them so bad. You're listening to the places where they might have some pain or they might have some issues, because invariably, if they're listening to you, or if you're listening to them and they're talking, they're eventually going to get to the point where it's going to come out where if there is something wrong, or I
Yep.
wish my person would do this a little bit more. Because if you're just asking the right questions, and which is a whole nother conversation, but if you've got the right questions, you're going to have this warm conversation. You're going to be building trust right away. And I think that you can build trust in a 30-minute conversation. I
Well,
really do. And,
before
and
we
and I
get to the
think,
follow-up piece,
yeah,
because I think I'd love to have you linger on the you even brought up the asking questions, but that's what I was going to ask you, was because you said, like,
okay,
if they are the ones doing the talking and let's say we're sitting down with an agent, and the agent is talking and they're sharing and they're doing 80% of the talking, and then eventually well, first of all, if they're doing 80% of the talking, something's going really, really well,
right, for sure,
right?
right,
Like they're
yeah,
doing,
yeah,
that's going extremely
yeah.
well.
That's the best sales call ever, for
It's the
sure.
best ever is if I shut up and the other person is talking. But what I was going to ask you before you said it
Mhm.
was, well, how do you make that happen? How do you get somebody to do 80% of the talking and willing to share, to be themselves, to be vulnerable, maybe to share a problem that perhaps you have a solution to, perhaps you don't. But
Yeah,
of course, the answer to that is questions, right? Like, so maybe
right,
just take a second, like when you're walking into a coffee, or maybe as you're planning some proactive phone calls to agents that maybe you know well,
yeah,
maybe you don't know well, but like,
right,
do you come in with some scripted questions?
for
Thoughts
sure.
on that?
Yeah, no, for sure I do. There's a list of questions, and depending, they range from, tell me what's working for you. What was your best success? What was your best closing? What was your best transaction last year?
Mm.
And then the gold in all of it is, oh, that sounds awesome. Tell me more about that. The gold is the tell me more about that statement, because
Ooh,
then they go, like, then they know that you're listening, right? They're not answering a question, because there's plenty of times, and we've all done this, where you've got your list of 5 questions and you just can't wait to spit them out, right? You're
right.
asking one, you don't even, they could be calling you every name in the book, and you're going to ask your next question because you have no idea what they just said to you, right? But the tell me more about that question, or
Dude, that's so
how did
good.
that make you feel, like, because you want to ask them, hey, tell me a train wreck, what happened, how did that make you feel, where do you think it went wrong, and how could it have got back on the rails earlier in the conversation? Those type follow-up questions is where, like, people really put, like, you can almost, sometimes you ask those questions and you can almost see, like, people's shoulders relax, like they just go, man, let me tell you about this. It's almost like when you get home and you've had a terrible day, and your wife says, what happened? You're like, oh man, let me tell you about what happened to me today. You can
Because
you
it's
can
so
feel
rare.
and sense it. Yes, you can feel and sense it, that they're opening up to you by their body language. It's so obvious too.
Because it's so rare. It's so rare that people demonstrate to us through asking meaningful questions, and then what you're describing is amazing follow-up questions, and demonstrating that they care about us by asking. And then what you're doing, I would say, is that when you ask a great follow-up question, which those were phenomenal, by the way, like, how did that make you feel? Tell me more about that. Those are phenomenal. Those questions, so it's like, well, for one thing, the biggest thing probably is it shows that you were listening. You
Right.
care. People,
Yep.
when we demonstrate, and put our attention on someone, demonstrate that we care, it's listening that makes that happen. And like, I can look like I'm listening, but man, when I can come back with a question that shows you that I was really paying attention, and it's like I'm engaging with your heart, who you are as a person, man, that's so meaningful. And
Yeah.
again, like, let's say that's happening in a coffee appointment. My exhortation to those that are listening, and for both you and I, Erin, is like to still remember that as that's happening, the end goal at the end of this 30-minute coffee is not that they would send me a deal, right? Like,
Right. For
I'm not,
sure.
it's like, that's down the road. If that
Yep.
happens in a week or a month or in 6 months or in a year, you and I, we've talked about this. That's amazing if it happens, if it
Right.
happens. But enough engagements with people like this, eventually
Yep.
those do turn into referrals. And
Yep.
that's how it's done.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and if they walk away with a warm feeling, they're going to, they get to the car, they're going to turn it on. They feel good about the conversation they just had with you. And they're going to have that moment where they say, man, Jay never even asked me for a loan. He didn't even ask me for a contact. He
Exactly.
didn't ask me for about, like, he really was here to get to know me. I mean, you've just pushed the trust train way down the tracks. The
Yes,
next
sir.
time you call in a week or two, or you're following up with a card, or whatever your follow-up system is.
Which
um
is okay, so now we're into the follow-up piece. Why is that
right.
so important? Because those two connect perfectly, right? These go together.
Because you take the emotion that you brought out in them, that tell me how you felt about that, tell me more about that one moment. If you write, I can't believe that you had this so and so happen on this, I thought about you for 3 hours that day. You can take them right back to that place
Yes.
by sending them a card, or even an email, or even a voice text or a video text, any of that. If you can get them back to that place of emotion where they were when they were with you, that bond that you create is so strong and so critical. Instead of, I enjoyed my time with you, I hope that we can get together again, laugh about a story, or invoke or send them something around, something funny that happened to them. You are advanced so far along the path to
Totally.
actually working with them, or create a new friend and a new relationship. And they're going to tell people about it. And that's, at the end of the day, that's our own referral system. They're going to tell somebody, I had a great
Yep.
conversation, a great coffee with Erin at MasonMac, and we didn't even talk about business, but man, we laughed a lot, and seems like a great guy, and all of that stuff. That's the word of mouth marketing is just beautiful when it comes from somebody out of that situation. So
Yeah. Well, and it to kind of come full circle, it's back to that, like, having this mindset of the long game, right? It's not
right.
being focused on a transaction. um like, I'm going to call, if I'm focused on, if I'm very transactional as a loan officer, then that means my proactive calls are going to, they're going to feel transactional to the
For
person
sure.
from the
Yep.
jump, if they even answer. So it's like
Right.
this mentality of, like, I'm going to make 100 phone calls to 100 agents I don't know,
Right.
and like, you're, by necessity, you're not really, you can't care. If I'm making
Right.
100 proactive phone calls to
Right.
real estate agents
Yeah.
today, I don't care about them.
I
How
know.
could you? How
Right.
could you? Well, that translates through the phone. I mean,
Yep.
it just does.
Yep.
And so this focus on the long game, I just think, helps a lot back to our original kind of topic of call reluctance, and like helping get ourselves and those of you that are listening over this emotional hurdle of it. It feels like such a big deal, and I've got to make this call, or I know, man, like, I did an amazing transaction for this agent 6 months ago, and I know I should have followed up with them, and then I didn't, and then I've continued to not, and it's
Right.
nagging at me and it's
Yeah.
bothering me, and like, um
Yeah.
but like, removing the pressure from myself and just going, gosh, like, really all that needs to happen is, like, I just need to take a stab, and it may not even be a successful stab, but just a
Sure.
move forward, because I'm not trying to get a deal from this agent tomorrow. It's fine
Right.
if a year later or 2 years
Yep.
later that happens, but like, how can I demonstrate to this person, to this agent, that I care?
Right.
And then I'm going to follow up like a madman, but like a person who cares.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, if you think of it again from a 30,000 foot level, you've got to create these strong relationships, up front, because you can't grow being transactional. If you're always chasing that one deal, you don't have that loyal book of businesses. Businesses don't grow by chasing one customer at a time. Nike wants you to buy 4 pairs of shoes every single year. They depend on you buying, those shoes every year. because they're advertising to go get other customers. It's the same with us.
Yes, sir.
We got to have our group of people that we know are going to send us, 3, 4, 5 deals a month while we're creating these next relationships to get us to that 6, 7, to get us that 9, 10, 15, whatever the next level is. If you're making 100 phone calls, you get one deal out of it. You're going to be doing that forever. There's no doubt about it. You'll never build a book of
You
business
can't.
from loyal customers,
Yeah.
and you want to enjoy yourself. It's not fun. That's no fun to have to every single day have to do that. You got to give yourself a break sometimes. So
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So good. Well, hey, this has been amazing.
yeah.
And we should do a follow-up. We should do a follow-up discussion on this sometime.
Okay.
But we probably should wrap it here really quick. Any closing thoughts or anything regarding call reluctance? It may be something that we just didn't hit today that you wanted to speak on that you could share.
Yeah, I think the one thing that in developing, I can't call them systems, but researching and warming up and things like that. If there are a lot of introverted people in this business that are super successful, and this is your way to meet people without any risk, really. This is your way to go meet people and not have to cold call. If you're creative, go all in on your creativity and use it to go connect with people. Show them your experience. Show them how knowledgeable you are. Get in there and share all of your knowledge and experience here. If you're sharing that online, people are going to see it, and 5 degrees of people are going to see it too. So not only are you connecting with this one person, but you don't have to be a cold calling, greasy hair salesman type person to be successful. These tactics and these strategies, they work. And I want people to think about that, because I see it happen every single day. So
no, that's really good. And I think I've shared this with you before. It just reminds me of a principle, I guess, for lack of a better word, that I've held on to for quite a while, which is it's like in a lot of ways in business, it's this principle: do the opposite. Whatever everyone else you think the majority of people are doing, do the opposite. So in this one, it would be, you hear all the time, and I've heard for 25 years, you've always got to be asking for the business. Ask for the business. You've got right. And by the way, there is some truth in that, right? I'm acknowledging there is some truth in that. However, if that's I think asking for the business, I think the worst example of that is people will, first of all, most people don't go to their loan closings, but those that do, a lot of times they're coached to you hand them 3 business cards and you tell them that I need 3 referrals from you, as we're sitting down and closing this transaction for the first time, as opposed to asking some compelling questions and follow-up questions and how did you feel, and and so it's a lot of times, I think, that focus on getting out of this being a transactional thing with the person and just focusing on who they are. Eventually down the road, maybe there could be a time and place to ask for the business, but that relational piece is what's so important.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I do. I feel like it's your get out of jail free card, is by using other skills other than, wanting to run through a wall to call people all day. I think that it's an amazing way. And I actually think it's a better way. But
yeah, that's really good. Hey, brother, great to see you.
Great to see you too. You're the best. Love you, man.
Thank you for sharing today. That was super helpful. And for those that are watching, anytime. I'm gonna try to link to a few resources. There was a couple things as we were talking today, Erin, that a couple podcasts and a couple books that tie into some things that you shared.
Okay.
So I'll try to link those in the resource of this video in case people want to go a little bit deeper. And I'll put your information in there as well. So if you want to reach out to Erin, have a cup of coffee with Erin, I think that'd be a great idea. Or have a phone call.
Love it.
You would love to do that. I
know.
No
recruiting. I'd love it.
Yep.
Jay, thanks for this. It's a blast as always. It's good to see you, my friend.
You bet, man. Great to see you.